Yeah, a couple things from an injury standpoint from a week ago to where we are this week. I think on the offensive line, we had a really good chance at having Zai and Geske back. Obviously, they couldn't go on Saturday. Zai, we thought might get there in time, but he just couldn't get there. Geske's improved a lot in a short amount of time, and then got good news today. Des Schuster has been cleared to be involved in practice with us starting tomorrow. So his first practice back with us, so that's some positives in that regard. Running back, obviously, Reggie, doesn't look good at this point for this week, but not ruling it out. But he might be a little bit of time. Did get better today. We obviously haven't hit the grass or taken the field till tomorrow, so really preparing for the idea that he may not be with us, which obviously thrust our two freshmen into a huge role moving forward. And then really from a defense side of the ball, Tariq Barnes was a guy that was a little bit literally hurt himself on the first play a week ago against a Purdue game. Played the game, but really had struggled a couple days after that, and thought he might be able to get in a position to be there on game day. Just wasn't. Eliminated him on literally on game day that he couldn't go. So some positives in that regards. Obviously, still missing quite a few guys and having some guys not get cleared, but hopefully that'll continue to get better as the week goes along. Some things from the game. Obviously, you've already talked to Barry and Aaron. Enough negatives that created us to lose a game that I think things could have bounced our way a little bit. You'd like to have them come forward, but we didn't come out in a positive light. I thought we did make strides. We dramatically reduced the number of penalties. Really have made a conscientious effort to stop eliminating things that have caused us to have failure, and that was a big one. I think also defensively to have our guys go out there so many times in a row. I think it was 5 different series where they were given the ball, not just the series itself, but how they took over. One was after a fumbled kickoff, one was after a block punt, one was after a fumbled completion on third down. They just kept going out there, sawing wood, and taking care of business. So hopefully that's a sign of more things good to come in that regard. I know they've worked really hard to get to where they are. Offensively, I think the opening drive was what we kind of practiced all week, and then to have that fail with being just short of the goal line, taking over the ball on the 25-yard line, moving it all the way down to 6-inch line, just set us back. I think we had 6 3-and-outs, and it was hard to find some rhythm. Obviously, right before the half, we did get a little bit of a couple plays there to get on the board, and then just couldn't sustain it, especially with some turnovers that we gave. That the defense gave them an opportunity to capitalize on. We couldn't do it, so that was the tail in the game. I think where we're at right now, we just got to continue to try to find and discover and find new ways to move the ball, score points, and on defense, continue to build our depth, especially with guys getting a little. This is a big week for us, just because it's week 7 of our preparation, right? And to have 6 games behind us, it's important for our guys to stay fresh and be ready to play. We got this, and obviously the Wisconsin game before we get a bye week, so this is the longest stretch of the season for our guys physically. We got to be very cognizant of that. I literally go through and on Sundays kind of go back to my last 2 years here and look at this week in particular to see how not only what we do from a practice standpoint, but what we do from meetings, scheduling, things we may back off of, we might move forward with, and kind of playing that into this week's schedule as well. So we'll make some adjustments and tweaks to our schedule. I think our guys felt it yesterday. They'll feel it tomorrow when we come over and practice, and we'll go from there. With that, open up for questions.
But on Saturday or Friday, you said offensive line depth was a concern going into training camp. When did that become a concern, and why?
I don't know if it was going into training camp. I think when we became depleted, we lost Zai. For us, Des Schuster was a guy that we were planning on, even though it wasn't. We've had guys of his caliber come in and play. I think those two things in particular, we were really short at tackle. We had obviously Julian coming back. We were going to move Zai out to tackle, which was an unproven commodity, and then he wasn't even in the lineup through all fall camp. If I said fall, I didn't mean, but I meant going into the season.
Gotcha.
I think last spring when we recruited, we had 2 guys that were committed to us. They're plug and play guys that are now playing at other schools that were committed to us. We lost that through the beautiful world we're all experiencing right now in recruiting. One of the things I do monitor is guys that that we had in our program that weren't able to follow through. So that's a little bit of that. But I think we were looking for answers, and then when we didn't get those answers had to come from within. We just don't have enough depth.
Realistically, could be in store for or with Des for a timeline, just given he's not practicing?
Yeah, Des is a big dude, and because of what he's been suffering from, we hadn't been able to do conditioning. So I think the big part of him is just going to be knowing the playbook, but also getting his body in a physical level to play. I don't think it would be this week. I don't know if it could be next week, but hopefully maybe on the back end of the bye week, you could probably hopefully look at something there.
Coach, when you're struggling like you have this year, do you worry about guys pointing fingers, doing all that?
Yeah, it's a great question. I've literally had dinner last night. I brought my Illini council and captains in to our staff room. We always have dinner in the building on Sunday, so we basically meet offense, defense, special teams, and then we usually take a dinner break and kind of take an hour to kind of just take a moment. We have football games going, guys eat in the building. We wanted to eat together. We call it family dinner after victory. We have it a victory meal, but that's not near as nice when we don't win. It's a lesser meal, but the brotherhood is there. So I brought in our Illini council and our captains, so it's about 15 guys. We kind of shot the breeze for a little bit, then I kind of get into the meat and potatoes of anything from A to Z. I always say it's from the time you come in the parking lot till the time you leave, anything structurally, schematically, timing-wise that we can talk through. And there were some good suggestions, but one of the things that has been very strong in that conversation, but also several individual conversations, is, Coach, from where we were when you got here to where we are now, just like the amount of that goes on, I think is at a minimum. I don't really see. There's guys that are frustrated. We're all frustrated. Sure. I thought Dylan Rosiak had a great quote about the pissed off feeling, right? Like that's him to a T, and that's a guy that is just continuing to build rapport in our building. I thought Casey had some really good comments after the game about focusing on the task at hand and focusing on himself. Isaiah Adams, I know, said some things in the locker room right after the game. Just the character we build upon is really, really strong. I'm not a overly sheriff in the outside world, but I think the faith in our guys and in each other and our coaches is pretty strong, and I don't see that wavering.
Coach, when the season's kind of not going the way that you thought it would go, is there a feeling as a head coach that you want to take more control over game planning and play calling on game day, or is it you still lean pretty hard on the coordinators?
You know what? I don't. You can ask my coaches, but I've never called a game when we were. At this time, a year ago, we were obviously 5-1. The year before that, we were 2-4. We're 2-4 once again. Obviously, I don't want to be where we're at, but it is what it is. And I would tell you that in all 3 seasons, my demeanor and my approach to how we game plan and what we do hasn't changed at all. I think offensively, defensively, there might be certain things each week that I feel like, hey, I really need to talk to them about this. I think in this case, Maryland, it's a dramatically different offense than what we just faced, right? So to have the game plans be in the same realm isn't really real. On defense, on the flip side, offensively, this is a group that has some carryover. And then, even though we didn't play him a year ago, the coordinator that's there now, he's been there the entire time with Locke. So there's a lot of carryover defensively since Mike's been there over the last 4 years. So I don't think so. I think the urge would be there, but again, this is my 15th year as a head coach. You hire good coaches to be good coaches, and that's what you got to do.
You mentioned after the game, maybe examining changes. What's come of that in terms of those conversations with the office?
Yeah, I would think, after any game, win or loss, you're going to have changes. You're going to have, but I think for us, particular on Saturday after we got done watching the film, Aaron, and he's going to share it with you. Aaron actually left our building, I think, at 2 a.m. Saturday night, drove to Indy, flew home, buried his grandfather, came back late that night, so he was gone all Saturday. So, I didn't have much. I had interaction with the defense staff. We talked, but it was really got done with it. We met as a staff, and then I sat down with the offense and looked at the game. And I'd say 3 areas we looked at were schematics, personnel, and then also, obviously, in-game adjustments. That was our big 3, and I think that's the same that you go through on a weekly basis because we're at a 2-4 team and we've struggled to put points on the board. It draws a little more attention, but I think we really got to, through 6 games, I think we know who our strengths are, but we also know probably what our weaknesses are. I think we got to do our best to maximize those strengths, minimize those weaknesses, and we say that a lot, but I think now, even 6 games into it, you can really hone in, okay, this guy can do this, he can't do that. And our guys have been fairly consistent in what they're doing. Isaiah probably Adams had his best play at right tackle. Julian played his best at left tackle. I think, Luke, obviously the one interception is totally unacceptable, but he had been pretty good in making better decisions since the Penn State game in that regards. So it just gets frustrating. There's these little moments that costs everybody. I think just if we looked at 3rd down and 4th and 1, I made an edit of that game, but also of this season, and I made an edit of last year, 3rd and 1, 4th and 1, and just looked at how we were to where we are, and drew some conclusions from that. But they're all big things, but they're mild things. I think if you just look at them individually, things that you can easily be corrected.
With Caden and Aiden probably having a bigger role on Saturday, is there anything particular this week that's important for them just to maybe be ready?
You know, Central Illinois' finest is going to be at full display on a big scale. Those 2 guys, man, are absolutely awesome to work with. Just relentless detail guys. I think they're really enjoying what game planning is. I don't know if they've ever really done that until this year, because neither one of them, obviously Aiden was here, but he wasn't involved in the game plan. Caden, like he was playing quarterback last year, right, in his system. So I think the art of preparing for an opponent, understanding what they're going to do, what they're going to possibly see. They're both really good competitors. I think Dad's done an outstanding job kind of getting both of them in a position to be successful. And if Reggie can't go, I mean, it thrusts right on their shoulders, and I think they'll be ready for it.
Well, good. Brandon, are you pleasantly surprised with what you're getting out of middle linebacker? Even on a night like Friday, we don't have Tyreek, but Dylan, KO, and James Cruz, you play really well.
You know, Dylan has been consistently getting better every week. Kanena has been a guy that his addition last year was he brought great energy. He's a pretty athletic kid. Obviously plays extremely hard. I thought him and Tariq both, and then Cruz to get in there. There was a play. Well, actually, the play that Kanena stripped the ball on, Cruz actually gets knocked down, right? And I showed to the offense, or showed to the entire team yesterday that, like, hey, this isn't a great play by James. He's struggling with a tight end. He comes underneath, but the tight end kind of knocks him down, literally while Kanena is knocking the ball out. So why the ball goes to the ground, James is going to the ground, but James literally spends no time on the ground, jumps up and makes a fumble recovery, right? And I would say there's a lot of players in that position who wouldn't have ever gotten up that fast and would have never made the fumble recovery because they had a bunch of guys around it. And again, just the whole idea of playing hard comes over, right? And I'm excited where those guys are. I think Tariq, especially the last 2 weeks, has been a little bit of a coach mode too, right? Like, I think he's doing a really good job teaching those guys. Tariq's played a lot of football for us, so when he wasn't in there, he's been awesome. He's been a great voice. So I think, again, some of that shows through. Like, one of the things I've really stressed the last 2 weeks was, obviously there's players that aren't here that were a major factor in our success a year ago, but it's voices more than anything. And Tariq has really stepped it up. I think Tariq and Tip Ryman in particular have stepped up. I thought Tip last week, on the play, there was a play that didn't get in the end zone. Right before we had the 2 short yardage stops, we ran a little reverse with Isaiah, and Tip literally sends the corner he was blocking into the first row of the stadium, and Henry kind of doesn't got his feet under control and allows a guy to slip under him. Otherwise, we don't even have those plays exist, right? And it's just frustrating for us in certain regards, but it also shows you how close we can be if we get our stuff taken care of.
You mentioned the voices thing
Yeah.
a few times.
Yeah.
How can you manufacture, help usher that in? Or how does that?
Yeah, I think if I had to, not redo, but I think starting the last spring, you have so many players that have been good players for a long time, but they hadn't been the foreshadow of their rooms, right? So Palcho, for instance, he'd been there since 1957, right? So like his voice had been really strong in that room, and you're naturally processing into Julian Pearl and Isaiah, who have done a really good job, but they kind of just handled their own business. And now there's a whole room that needs guidance. And Josh Kreutz, who's absolutely awesome, great energy guy. He's literally becoming. Now this will be his 7th game that he started at this level, right? And I think in certain position groups, I wish I would have been more assertive about teaching what leadership is. We talk about it all the time in a big picture setting, and I think that the part that I've processed is you have to be a little bit more diligent with certain position groups when leaders leave, right, to what it is. I text John Snyder. I don't know if I told you that story. Like, Spoon made a couple plays a couple weeks ago, and I text, hey, let me borrow Spoon. I'm not even going to play him, right? Like, I just want his voice, right? And those are things that you can overcome with time, but sometimes it takes a little bit. We knew in the back end defensively, we got new faces that we're going to take a time to transition. Offensive line, even though we lost Pilstrom and Palcho, moving Zai to a different tackle position, bringing another starter in, 2 guys into the interior, like it was going to be different, and probably that was the hardest thing that we probably had to replace more than anything.
Bro, what went wrong on those two special teams errors, the kickoff,
The block punt?
and then the block punt?
Yeah, the block punt, we were running a rugby type situation, and for whatever reason, Hugh decided to kind of take off. Tip is blocking the guy he's supposed to block, and he's expecting the ball to be punted on his inside shoulder. So, really an issue that hadn't popped up. No reason to pop up, but obviously we got to make a better decision out of it. And then the kickoff return, we chart those guys pre-practice when they're kicking that way. The ball's landing somewhere between 5 and 1 yard line, and then when that ball got hung up, Tip didn't even look at it, which caused him to move forward, and then the ball lands perfectly on the 20-yard line and goes straight back to them if it just goes any other direction. But we got a field that was similar to some of the situations that we've had in the past here, that we got to do a better job of. This is the third for a year for me being here. Like every year there's been a kickoff issue with that wind when it gets caught up in there, and we just have to put everybody on high alert when that happens. And then the second one, Tip took a step forward, but then he backed up too, which caused those guys to kind of react the way they did when he raised his hand as a fair catch. When one man raises his hand for fair catch, it's a fair catch for everybody.
Coach,
Yep.
how well do you know Coach Loxley, and what do you think of what he's done in Maryland?
Yeah, Lox and I, honestly, are probably he's as close as I have in this business. Like a really. It wasn't so much when we were here. I was a young coach, a little full of myself back then, and I didn't like the way sometimes things went in the recruiting trail with Lox. And then really through some mutual friends, got introduced to one another, had a lot of fun, just kind of socially with each other, and then when he was at Alabama, we talked quite a bit, and then when he became a head coach again, we started conversing. He's hired some of the guys that I've been around and vice versa, and then he has an affection for horses, and I remember running into him at I think it was the Belmont. I was with Belichick and me, and we came out of it was just a torrential downpour, and we're all in suits, right? And I'm walking with Bill, and all of a sudden in the corner I look up, and I'm like, I think that's Lox. And it was like in the middle of this nowhere area, right, in Baltimore. We were looking for our car services to pick us up, like 3 or 4 in the afternoon, and I said, Lox, and he's like, Bielema? And then I'm standing there with Belichick, and he was trying to piece it all together in a matter of seconds. It was kind of funny, but yeah, good man, respect him offensively, just super high intelligent, does a really good job the way he recruits, the way he staff, all the players, all the coaches that I've been around that have worked for him, really enjoy working for him, especially this Maryland thing. And then when I got here, a lot of people had common relationships with him, and then they found out we knew each other. I'll get an occasional FaceTime or call from someone that's visiting him, right, and they know that we're mutually connected. So a lot of respect for who he is and what he's done, and obviously a 501 football team.